3,000 years ago, the Galactic Council made what they believed was a necessary decision. Earth, they declared, was too dangerous to exist. Humanity's rapid technological advancement, their unpredictable nature, and their refusal to submit to galactic authority made them a threat that could not be contained. So they acted with swift, merciless efficiency. The orbital bombardment lasted 72 hours. When the fires finally died and the radiation settled, Earth was nothing but a scarred, lifeless rock floating in the void. 8 billion human souls silenced forever. The Council archived the event as Necessary Pacification Protocol 7749 and moved on, confident they had eliminated a cancer before it could spread. They were wrong. Unknown to the Council, humanity had already begun to scatter among the stars. Hidden colonies, secret research stations, and explorer ships had carried the human spirit far beyond Earth's doomed orbit. These survivors watched their homeworld die from the darkness of space, and in that moment of ultimate loss, something fundamental changed within them. For 3 millennia, these scattered children of Earth have grown in the shadows. They have learned. They have adapted. They have planned. And most importantly, they have never forgotten the faces of those who murdered their world. The Galactic Council rules over 10,000 species across 1,000,000 worlds. Their fleets patrol hyperspace lanes with absolute authority. Their technology seems unstoppable, their power unquestionable. They believe themselves the eternal masters of the galaxy. They are about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon was never their technology or their ships. It was their memory, their patience, and their absolute refusal to forgive those who cross them. The humans are coming home, and this time they're not asking for permission. Admiral Zexhai clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as he reviewed the quarterly security reports from his command post aboard the dreadnought Asterisk Council's Will Asterisk. The massive vessel, spanning nearly 5 kilometers from bow to stern, represented the pinnacle of galactic military engineering. Its quantum-fold cannons could crack moons. Its shields could withstand the fury of a star, and its sensor arrays could detect a grain of sand from 3-star systems away. Or so the specifications claimed. Zexhai had never needed to test those limits during his 4 decades of service. The galaxy had been remarkably peaceful since the last major uprising 300 years ago. The various species had learned their place in the cosmic order, and the Council's authority remained unquestioned. "Admiral," came the voice of his aide, Lieutenant Mordek, a young Cathurian with the typical nervous energy of his species. "The morning briefings are ready for your review." The Zexhai waved a dismissive tentacle. "Summarize them? I doubt there's anything of consequence." "The 3 cargo disputes in the Vega sector, all resolved through standard arbitration. A minor pirate raid on a mining colony in the Outer Rim, handled by local security forces. And," Mordek paused, his bioluminescent patches flickering uncertainly, "there's an unusual report from the Deep Space Monitoring Station at Kepler 442. Unusual how?" They detected several hyperspace signatures approximately 6 hours ago. The energy readings were inconsistent with known drive technologies. Zexhai's attention sharpened. In his experience, unusual had a way of becoming catastrophic if ignored. "Show me the data." The holographic display materialized between them, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. Kepler 442 sat on the outer edge of Council territory, a barren system with nothing but a few rocky planets and an automated monitoring station. Red markers indicated the detected anomalies. "The 7 signatures total," Mordek explained, his voice gaining confidence as he fell into his analytical rhythm. "They appeared simultaneously at the system's edge, maintained formation for approximately 37 minutes, then vanished again. No ships were detected on optical or gravimetric sensors." Equipment malfunction," Zexhai concluded immediately. "The monitoring stations are ancient. Half of them are running on backup systems that should have been replaced a century ago." "That's what the station commander initially believed, sir. However, they ran full diagnostics twice and found no errors. Furthermore, the energy signatures were remarkably complex. Our xenotechnology specialists have been analyzing the data for 6 hours and can't identify the drive type." Zexhai studied the display more carefully. The formation pattern was precise, almost military in its organization. 6 ships arranged in a perfect hexagon around a 7th central vessel. that spoke of discipline and coordination that pirates or smugglers rarely possessed. It could be a first contact situation, he mused. Some species from beyond our borders testing our defenses. The xenobiology department considered that possibility, sir. However, they pointed out that any species capable of developing hyperspace travel should also possess sensors capable of detecting our monitoring stations. The probability of accidentally emerging so close to our equipment approaches zero. Then they wanted to be detected. Zexhi's combat instincts, dormant for so long, began to stir. They were sending a message. Before Mordek could respond, the communication array chimed with an incoming priority transmission. The hologram shifted to display the concerned face of Commander Veltari, the Asari officer responsible for the Kepler monitoring station. Admiral Zexhi, we have a developing situation. 15 minutes ago, we detected the same 7 signatures returning to the system. This time, they're not hiding. The display updated to show 7 new contacts, each one clearly visible on multiple sensor arrays. The ships were moving at sublight speeds directly toward the monitoring station, their course unwavering and purposeful. A visual confirmation, Zexhi demanded. Negative, sir. They're still too distant for optical resolution. But, Admiral, Veltari's voice carried a note that Zexhi had learned to dread during his long career. It was the sound of an experienced officer trying to report something that didn't make sense. What is it, Commander? The ships appear to be broadcasting something. Not standard communication protocols, but some kind of narrow-beam transmission directed at our station. Our communications specialists have been trying to decode it, but the signal is unlike anything in our databases. And put it through. The bridge fell silent as an eerie sound filled the air. It was clearly artificial, a rhythmic pattern of tones that rose and fell with mathematical precision. Yet there was something hauntingly organic about it, as if the mathematics were wrapped around some deeper emotional core. What in the void is that? Mordek whispered. Zexhi felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The sound triggered some primitive recognition in his consciousness, though he couldn't place why. How long have they been broadcasting this? Since they arrived, sir. The signal is remarkably powerful. It's actually causing minor interference with our other sensor arrays. Admiral, came a new voice from the communications station. I'm receiving an emergency transmission from the 5th Fleet Command. They're requesting immediate clarification on the Kepler situation. Zexhi's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Word was spreading fast, which meant political pressure would soon follow. The council had little patience for mysteries, especially ones that occurred near their borders. Tell 5th Fleet that we're investigating, and dispatch the 3rd Squadron to Kepler 442 immediately. Sir, that's 12 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers, Mordek pointed out. Perhaps we're overreacting to what might be a simple exploratory mission. Perhaps, Zexhi agreed. But in 40 years of service, I've learned that mysterious ships appearing on our borders are rarely bringing gifts and flowers. The strange broadcast continued its hypnotic pattern as the bridge crew worked to coordinate the response. Zexhi found himself oddly drawn to the sound, though he couldn't explain why. There was something familiar about it, something that tugged at memories he couldn't quite access. Admiral, Veltari's voice cut through his contemplation. The unknown ships have just altered course. They're no longer approaching the station. Where are they headed? Toward the inner system, sir. Specifically toward the 3rd planet. Zexhi called up the system data. Kepler 442c was a dead world, a rocky planet with a thin atmosphere that had been surveyed centuries ago and found worthless. No resources, no strategic value, no reason for anyone to visit it. Why would they go there? Mordek wondered aloud. Commander Veltari, I want continuous updates on their position, and see if your specialists can make any progress on that transmission. Understood, sir. But, Admiral, there's something else. We've been analyzing the ship's energy signatures more carefully. While we can't identify their drive technology, the power outputs are significant. Each vessel appears to be generating more energy than our heavy cruisers. That definitely got Zexhi's attention. Ships of that capability didn't just wander into Council space by accident. How significant? The conservative estimates suggest they're each carrying enough firepower to engage a Council battleship. The bridge fell silent except for the continued alien broadcast. Zexhai felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a familiar cloak. Whatever was happening at Kepler 442, it wasn't going to be resolved with standard diplomatic protocols. How long until the third squadron arrives at Kepler? 18 hours at maximum hyperspace velocity, sir. And how long until those unknown ships reach the third planet? The Veltari checked her displays. At their current speed, approximately 3 hours. The Zexhai made his decision. Commander, I want you to withdraw the monitoring station to a safe distance immediately. Maintain surveillance, but don't take any unnecessary risks. Sir, regulations require that we. Regulations don't account for 7 unknown warships appearing in our space and behaving mysteriously. Zexhai cut her off. Use your judgment, but keep your people alive. As the transmission ended, Mordek approached with a data pad. Sir, I've been researching the system history. Kepler 442 was thoroughly surveyed 400 years ago. The third planet showed no signs of previous habitation or valuable resources. But the survey was conducted by the Zelonian Exploration Guild. They weren't exactly known for thoroughness. Zexhai nodded grimly. The Zelonians had been more interested in quick profits than comprehensive analysis. It was entirely possible they had missed something important. The alien broadcast suddenly shifted, the mathematical patterns becoming more complex and urgent. Several bridge officers looked up from their stations, drawn by the change in tone. Sir, called the sensor operator, a young draconi with scales that shifted color when he was excited. I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the unknown ships. They appear to be charging some kind of weapons systems. Weapons? Are they targeting the monitoring station? Negative, sir. They're aimed at the planet's surface. Zexhai felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. Get me a direct line to Council High Command. Priority 1. Admiral, that will trigger full military alert protocols across 3 sectors, Mordek warned. Then let's hope I'm wrong about what we're witnessing. Zexhai watched the tactical display as 7 unknown ships prepared to bombard a dead planet for reasons that made no sense. But 30 years of experience tells me we're about to discover that Kepler 442c isn't as dead as we thought. The alien broadcast reached a crescendo, the mathematical patterns weaving together into something that almost sounded like a lament, a song of mourning that transcended species and language, speaking directly to something deep in the consciousness of every living being who heard it. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the transmission stopped. In the silence that followed, Zexhai realized he was holding his breath. Around him, the bridge crew stared at their instruments with expressions of confusion and growing concern. "Admiral," whispered the communications officer, "I'm receiving reports from across the sector. Every ship, every station within 50 light years of Kepler 442 heard that transmission. The signal propagated faster than the speed of light." That's impossible," Mordek stated flatly. "No known technology can." He was interrupted by alarms as every sensor array on the ship activated simultaneously. The holographic display erupted with new data as the 7 unknown ships began their bombardment of Kepler 442c. But these weren't conventional weapons. Instead of plasma bolts or kinetic rounds, the ships were projecting some kind of energy field that interacted with the planet's surface in ways that defied explanation. Where the beams touched the ground, the very matter seemed to respond, shifting and reshaping itself according to some predetermined pattern. "They're not destroying the planet," the sensor operator reported in amazement. "They're building something." Zexhai watched in fascination and growing dread as structures began to emerge from the planet's surface. Not constructed by conventional means, but somehow called forth from the very elements that made up the world itself. Spires of crystalline material stretched toward the sky, connected by delicate bridges that sparkled with their own internal light. How long has it been since the Galactic Council destroyed Earth?" he asked quietly. Mordek checked his historical database. 3,047 years, sir. Why do you ask? Zexhai didn't answer immediately. He was thinking about the strange familiarity of that broadcast, the mathematical precision of the arriving ships, and the impossible technology being displayed on Kepler 442c. "Sir," Mordek pressed, Start researching every available file on the human species, Zexhai ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. Everything. Their history, their technology, their cultural patterns, everything we know about them. But sir, the humans have been extinct for 3 millennia. The Council's records clearly state. The records state that Earth was sterilized, Zexhai corrected. But humans were spacefaring before the bombardment. Some of them might have been elsewhere. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If humans had survived, if they had spent 3,000 years developing technology beyond current council understanding, if they had finally decided to return to galactic civilization. Sir, the unknown ships are moving again, reported the sensor operator. They're leaving the planet and heading directly toward the monitoring station. I thought you ordered Veltari to withdraw to safe distance. I did, but these ships are moving at velocities that shouldn't be possible. They'll intercept the station in 47 minutes. Zexhai closed his eyes and tried to think like a human. He had studied their history during his academy training, though it had been presented as a cautionary tale about the dangers of uncontrolled expansion. Humans had been remarkable for their emotional intensity, their long memories, and their absolute refusal to forgive those who wronged them. If they had indeed survived, if they had spent 3 millennia planning and preparing, then the galaxy was about to face something unprecedented. Not just a military threat, but the return of a species that had every reason to seek vengeance against those who had tried to exterminate them. Mordek, I need you to send a message to every Council fleet commander. Full encryption, highest priority. Well, what should the message say, sir? Zexhai looked at the tactical display showing 7 impossible ships approaching the monitoring station with technology that defied understanding. In the distance, Kepler 442c continued to transform, as ancient energies reshaped its surface according to some grand design. Tell them that the humans have come home, he said quietly, and they remember everything. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the Asterisk Remembrance Asterisk, watching the transformed surface of what the galactic databases still called Kepler 442c. To her, it would always be Haven 7, The backup world her ancestors had prepared in secret during humanity's final desperate years before the bombardment. The terraforming beams had worked perfectly, awakening systems that had lain dormant for 3 millennia. Crystal spires now pierced the sky, each one a monument to the 8 billion souls lost when Earth died. The atmospheric processors hummed with gentle efficiency, converting the thin air into something breathable for the human crews who would soon walk on solid ground again. Report from the engineering teams, came the voice of her second-in-command, Lieutenant Marcus Webb. His great-grandfather had been among the survivors who escaped Earth's destruction aboard a secret research vessel. Like most humans of his generation, he carried the weight of inherited grief and carefully nurtured rage. The memorial gardens are taking shape nicely. Full biosphere establishment within 48 hours. The quantum communication arrays are online and linking with the other settlement sites across the galaxy. Sarah nodded without taking her eyes off the planet. 67 worlds in all, each one prepared in secret by human refugees over the course of 3,000 years. Each one now awakening simultaneously as humanity announced its return to galactic civilization. What about the Council monitoring station? Still maintaining distance, but they're broadcasting standard diplomatic queries. Commander Veltari seems like a reasonable officer. She's not pushing her luck. Smart of her. Sarah finally turned from the viewport, her pale blue eyes carrying the calculating intensity that marked all children of the Exodus. Any response to our historical transmission? Nothing yet, though our sensors indicate significant communication traffic throughout this sector. I'd say we got their attention. The historical transmission had been Sarah's idea, a carefully crafted message that would be immediately recognizable to any species that had studied Earth's final days. It was the mathematical representation of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the same piece that had been broadcasting from Earth's last functioning radio station when the Council's bombardment began. Humanity had chosen its first words carefully. Not threats or demands, but a reminder of what had been lost. Beauty, culture, and 8 billion unique voices silenced forever by those who claimed to be the galaxy's protectors. Ma'am, called Ensign Rodriguez from the communications station. We're receiving a transmission from the Asterisk Vindication. Admiral Harrison requests immediate conference. Sarah felt a familiar mix of anticipation and unease. Admiral James Harrison commanded the human expeditionary fleet, 7 ships that represented the culmination of 3 millennia of careful planning and technological development. He was also her uncle, though family relationships had become complicated things among the scattered children of Earth. Put him through main screen. Harrison's weathered face appeared on the view screen, his gray eyes reflecting the same barely controlled fury that burned in every human survivor. Behind him, the bridge of the Asterisk Vindication bustled with activity as his crew monitored the developing situation across multiple star systems. Sarah, status report on the memorial site. On schedule, Uncle James. The planetary awakening protocols completed successfully. Haven 7 is ready to receive our people. Good, because the situation is developing faster than anticipated. Intelligence reports indicate that Council forces are mobilizing across 17 sectors. They're not taking our return well. Sarah wasn't surprised. Humanity's survival had always been the Galactic Council's greatest fear. Not because humans were particularly advanced, but because they represented something the Council couldn't control or predict. 3,000 years had given the galaxy's rulers time to grow comfortable with their unopposed authority. How are the other sites progressing? 15 worlds are fully operational. Another 23 will be ready within the week. The remaining 29 are proceeding on schedule. Harrison paused, his expression darkening. But Sarah, we've detected Council fleet movements toward 3 of our outer settlements. They're not coming to talk. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. After 3,000 years of careful planning, they had always known this moment would come. The Council would never accept humanity's return, not willingly. The question wasn't whether there would be war, but whether humanity was ready for it. What are your orders, sir? Continue with the memorial construction, but prepare for defensive operations. If they want to spill blood on ground consecrated to our dead, we'll accommodate them. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and the weight of command. Through the viewport, The crystal spires of Haven 7 continued their slow growth, each one programmed with the genetic memories of Earth's final moments. When complete, they would sing with the voices of the lost, ensuring that no human would ever forget the price of trusting the galaxy's established order. Ma'am, Webb approached with a data pad. Final count on available military assets. Sarah reviewed the numbers with professional detachment. 7 primary vessels, each incorporating technology that surpassed anything the Council possessed. Quantum-fold drives that could traverse the galaxy in days rather than months. Energy shields based on dimensional manipulation that could deflect the fury of a star. Weapons systems that converted matter directly into energy, bypassing conventional defensive measures entirely. But numbers only told part of the story. The Council commanded thousands of ships across hundreds of sectors, supported by the industrial capacity of 10,000 species. Humanity's technological advantages were significant, but they weren't infinite. Assessment? She asked Webb. In a straight fight, we can match any council fleet they send against us. But if they commit their full military strength, we'll be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Then we make sure it's not a straight fight. Sarah moved to the tactical station, calling up a holographic display of local space. The Council's greatest weakness is that they've grown complacent. 3,000 years of unopposed rule has made them predictable. She highlighted several key systems on the display. They'll expect us to defend our settlements, to fight like a conventional military force. Instead, we hit them where they don't expect it. Their infrastructure, their supply lines, their symbols of authority. Guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale, Webb mused. It could work, but it will also paint us as terrorists in the eyes of every species under Council rule. Let them think what they want. Sarah's voice carried the cold edge that 3 millennia of exile had sharpened to a razor's point. We're not here to win hearts and minds. We're here to collect a debt that's been accumulating interest for 3,000 years. Before Webb could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The tactical display updated to show new contacts emerging from hyperspace at the system's edge. 12 ships in Council formation, their energy signatures identifying them as elements of the 3rd Squadron. Right on schedule, Sarah observed. Admiral Zexhai doesn't waste time. Ma'am, they're broadcasting standard council authority protocols, demanding immediate surrender and submission to galactic law. A response. Webb hesitated. What would you like me to tell them? Sarah considered the question carefully. Their next words would echo across the galaxy, defining humanity's position for generations to come. The survivors had debated this moment for centuries, crafting the perfect statement to announce their return. Open a channel to the Council ships. Full spectrum broadcast, maximum power. Channel open, ma'am. Sarah looked directly into the camera, knowing that her image would soon be transmitted to Council headquarters and broadcast across 10,000 worlds. When she spoke, her voice carried the accumulated grief and rage of 8 billion murdered souls. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the human vessel Remembrance Asterisk, speaking for all children of Earth. 3,000 years ago, the Galactic Council declared our species too dangerous to exist and proceeded to sterilize our homeworld. 8 billion innocent lives were extinguished in the name of galactic peace and stability. She paused, letting the words sink in. Today, we return to reclaim what was taken from us. Not our homeworld, which can never be restored, but our place in this galaxy and our right to exist among the stars. We do not seek war, but we will not submit to those who attempted our extermination. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. In the tactical display, the Council ships maintained their formation, weapons powered but not yet targeting. To the species of the galaxy, know that humanity remembers both friends and enemies. Those who stood by while Earth burned will find no mercy in us. Those who secretly opposed the Council's genocide may yet find redemption. But understand this. The age of unchallenged Council authority ends today. Sarah signaled for the transmission to end, then turned to Webb. All hands to battle stations, and signal the fleet. It's time to show the galaxy what 3,000 years of preparation has created. The asterisk Remembrance shuddered as its quantum fold engines came online, reality bending around the ship as it prepared to demonstrate technology that shouldn't exist. Around them, The 6 other human vessels formed a defensive pattern that incorporated mathematical principles unknown to Council military doctrine. Ma'am, the Council ships are powering weapons, reported the tactical officer. Admiral Zexhai is apparently not interested in negotiation. Neither are we, Sarah replied. Target their lead ship's propulsion systems. Let's give them a demonstration they'll remember. The asterisk remembrances asterisk primary weapon system, activated with a sound like reality tearing apart. Instead of visible energy beams or kinetic projectiles, the ship fired concentrated packets of quantum uncertainty that existed in multiple states simultaneously until they collided with their target. The Council flagship's shields flared and died as the quantum torpedoes passed through them like they were made of paper. The ship's propulsion systems simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but unmade on a fundamental level, leaving the massive vessel drifting helplessly in space. Impossible, whispered the tactical officer. Their shields should have deflected anything short of a supernova. Council shield technology is based on deflecting energy and matter, Sarah explained calmly. Our weapons operate on quantum uncertainty principles. The shields can't deflect something that exists in multiple states until the moment of impact. The remaining Council ships opened fire, their plasma cannons and kinetic rounds creating a light show that should have been lethal. Instead, the beams and projectiles seemed to bend around the human vessels, deflected by gravitational fields that twisted space-time itself. "We return fire," Sarah ordered. "Disable, don't destroy. I want survivors to carry word back to their command." The 6 more Council ships found themselves powerless as quantum torpedoes unmade their primary systems. The remaining vessels, faced with technology they couldn't understand or counter, began to withdraw toward the edge of the system. "Let them go," Sarah commanded as her weapons officers requested permission to pursue. "Admiral Zexhai is a veteran. He'll recognize when he's outmatched and report accordingly." "Oh, ma'am, we're receiving emergency transmissions from the disabled ships. They're requesting assistance with evacuation procedures." Sarah felt a moment of genuine conflict. The human part of her wanted to help, to show the galaxy that they were better than their enemies. But the survivor part, hardened by 3 millennia of exile, saw only the descendants of those who had murdered Earth. Respond with technical assistance only, she decided. We won't let them die, but we won't rescue them either. They made their choice when they opened fire. As the human fleet maintained its position over Haven 7, Sarah watched the Council ships struggle with their disabled systems. It would take them hours to restore minimum functionality, time enough for word of humanity's return to spread throughout Council space. Ma'am, Webb approached with another data pad. Intelligence reports from our other settlement sites. Similar encounters across 17 systems. No human losses, but the Council is definitely testing our capabilities. And our response? Consistent across all sites. Disable and withdraw. Show them they can't win, but don't escalate unnecessarily. Sarah nodded approvingly. Phase 1 of humanity's return was proceeding according to plan. Establish the settlements, demonstrate technological superiority, and force the Council to acknowledge that the old rules no longer applied. But she knew this was only the beginning. The Council would regroup, adapt their strategies, and commit greater resources to the problem. Eventually, words and demonstrations would give way to something darker and more final. Webb, I want you to coordinate with the engineering teams on the planet. Accelerate the memorial construction schedule. I have a feeling we're going to need those crystal spires online sooner than planned. Ma'am, the spires are purely ceremonial. They have no military value. Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the Council ships finally restore enough power to limp away from the system. They had no idea what was really happening on Haven 7, no understanding of what humanity had truly been building during their long exile. And trust me, Marcus, when the Council discovers what those spires actually do, they're going to wish they had left us in exile. Below them, Haven 7 continued its transformation. Crystal spires reached toward the stars, each one a perfect harmonic resonator designed to amplify and broadcast human thoughts and memories across subspace itself. When activated simultaneously across all 67 worlds, they would create a psychic network spanning the galaxy. The Council had destroyed Earth because they feared humanity's unpredictable nature. Soon, they would discover that exile had given humanity something far more dangerous than unpredictability. It had given them unity of purpose and the patience to plan beyond a single lifetime. The age of human exile was ending. The age of human ascendancy was about to begin. High Counselor Thaindok stood before the assembled representatives of 10,000 species, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns that spoke of barely controlled rage. The Great Council chamber, carved from a single asteroid and expanded over millennia of galactic civilization, had witnessed many crises, but none like this. 17 systems compromised, 43 ships disabled, unknown technology that renders our defensive capabilities obsolete. His voice resonated through the chamber's translation matrix, reaching every delegate in their native language. This is not some minor border incident or primitive species making territorial claims. This is the return of humanity. A ripple of unease swept through the assembly. Many of the younger delegates had never heard of humans except as historical footnotes. Extinct primitives who had overreached and paid the price. But the older representatives remembered the debates, the fear, the terrible necessity that had led to Earth's sterilization. The Delegate Morthak of the Zilonian Trade Federation rose from his seat, his scaled head catching the chamber's light. With respect, High Counselor, the humans were exterminated 3,000 years ago. The bombardment was thorough. Complete planetary sterilization was confirmed by multiple survey teams. The planet was sterilized, Thaindok acknowledged. But humans were spacefaring before the bombardment. Intelligence now indicates that significant populations escaped the destruction and have spent the intervening millennia preparing for this moment. The chamber erupted in voices as delegates demanded details, explanations, and assurances that their own territories were safe. Thaindok allowed the chaos to continue for precisely 30 seconds before activating the silence protocol that muted all unauthorized communication. Admiral Zexai has provided detailed reports on the human capabilities observed at Kepler 442. I will now share his findings with the Assembly. The chamber's central hologram activated, showing three-dimensional recordings from the 3rd Squadron's encounter with human forces. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as council ships, representing the pinnacle of galactic military technology, were disabled by weapons that seemed to ignore the fundamental laws of physics. The quantum uncertainty weapons, came the voice of Admiral Zexhai himself, transmitted from his flagship. They fire concentrated packets of quantum states that don't resolve into specific forms until impact. Our shields are designed to deflect energy and matter, not probability waves. The delegate Kethvar of the Asari Republics leaned forward, her blue features tense with concentration. What about their defensive systems? How are they deflecting our weapons? The gravitational manipulation on a scale we've never encountered. They're bending space-time itself to redirect incoming fire. Our plasma cannons and kinetic rounds are following curved space-time paths that carry them around the target vessels entirely. The implications hung in the chamber like a toxic cloud. If humanity possessed technology capable of manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe, then the balance of galactic power had shifted dramatically overnight. How many ships? Asked Delegate Rindau of the Draconi Empire, his serpentine form coiled in a position that suggested barely restrained aggression. Intelligence estimates suggest 7 primary vessels of unknown class, supported by smaller craft for planetary operations. However, Zexhai paused, his mandibles clicking with frustration. We have detected human presence in 67 systems simultaneously. Either they possess far more ships than initially observed, or they have developed faster-than-light communication and coordination methods that surpass our own. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of the situation became clear. Humanity hadn't just survived their attempted extermination. They had spent 3 millennia preparing for this moment, developing technology that made the Council's vast military superiority irrelevant. A High Counselor Thaindok stepped forward, his crystalline form shifting to deep red patterns that indicated maximum authority mode. The question before us is not whether humanity poses a threat. That has been clearly established. The question is how we respond to that threat. The delegate Morthak rose again, his voice carrying the weight of 3 centuries of experience. The humans have made no aggressive moves beyond disabling our ships. Perhaps negotiation is possible. Negotiation? The voice belonged to Elder Velnath of the Kithurian Collective, her ancient form barely visible within the life support pod that kept her centuries-old body functional. You speak of negotiating with a species we attempted to exterminate. What possible terms could we offer that would satisfy their desire for vengeance? They could have destroyed our ships, Morthak pointed out. Instead, they disabled them and provided technical assistance for evacuation. This suggests they are not simply seeking random destruction. Admiral Zexhi's image shifted as he consulted his tactical displays. Respectfully, Delegate Morthak, I believe you're misinterpreting their actions. They weren't showing mercy. They were sending a message. We can kill you whenever we choose, but today we choose not to. That's not diplomacy. That's psychological warfare. Elder Velnath's support pod hummed as she accessed historical databases through her neural interface. I was present during the original debates about the human problem. We studied their psychology extensively before making the decision to act. Humans do not forgive. They do not forget. And they plan across multiple generations with a patience that borders on obsession. What are you suggesting? Asked High Counselor Thaindok. I am suggesting that negotiation is impossible because humanity has already decided on their terms. They want the complete dissolution of the Galactic Council and the punishment of every species that participated in Earth's destruction. The chamber erupted again as delegates realized the implications. If Elder Velnath was correct, then humanity's return wasn't the beginning of a territorial dispute or trade conflict. It was the opening move in a war for the future of galactic civilization itself. Order, Thaindok's voice cut through the chaos like a quantum blade. Admiral Zexhi, what is your military assessment? A honest assessment, High Counselor. In a conventional engagement, human technology gives them significant advantages. But they only have 7 ships that we've confirmed. We have thousands. If we can coordinate a massive response before they establish stronger defensive positions. Well, you're suggesting a preemptive strike. I'm suggesting that waiting gives them time to consolidate their advantages. Every day we delay, more of their sleeping settlements activate. More of their technology comes online. more of their forces reveal themselves. The delegate Kethvar stood, her diplomatic training evident in her careful posture and measured words. High Counselor, a preemptive strike against human settlements would be indistinguishable from the original bombardment of Earth. We would be confirming their worst fears about our intentions and allowing them to strengthen their position confirms our worst fears about their capabilities, Admiral Zexhai countered. This isn't about right and wrong anymore. This is about survival. The debate continued for hours, with delegates arguing every possible response from immediate military action to formal diplomatic recognition of human sovereignty. But High Counselor Thaindok noticed something that chilled his crystalline core. The longer they debated, the more reports arrived of new human settlements activating across the galaxy. Enough, he finally declared, invoking his authority to end the session. Admiral Zexhai, prepare contingency plans for military action. Delegate Kethvar, draft formal diplomatic overtures. We will pursue both options simultaneously until one proves viable. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Elder Velnanath's support pod approached the High Counselor's platform. Her ancient voice carried the weight of centuries when she spoke. Thaindok, there is something else you must consider. The original decision to destroy Earth wasn't made lightly. We studied humanity extensively, analyzed their potential impact on galactic civilization. I've read the historical reports. Then you know why we were afraid of them. Not their technology, which was primitive by our standards. Not their military strength, which was negligible. We were afraid of their ideas. The Thaindok's crystalline form shifted to patterns of confusion. Ideas, individual freedom, personal responsibility. The concept that authority must be earned rather than inherited. These notions spread like viruses among species exposed to human culture. They destabilized entire civilizations. The High Counselor felt a new chill as he realized the full implications. You believe they've returned not just for revenge, but to spread those same ideas. I believe 3,000 years of exile has given them time to perfect both their technology and their philosophy. We destroyed their homeworld, but we may have inadvertently created something far more dangerous. Before Thaindok could respond, his personal communicator activated with an emergency transmission from his intelligence chief. The holographic image of Director Sithrak appeared, his normally composed features twisted with unprecedented concern. High Counselor, we've detected massive energy buildups across all confirmed human settlements. Whatever they're constructing on those worlds is approaching operational status. What kind of energy buildups? Unlike anything in our databases. The signature suggests some form of quantum resonance technology, but the scale is enormous. Each settlement is generating power equivalent to a small star. Elder Velnath's support pod hummed ominously. How long until these systems are fully operational? Conservative estimates suggest 72 hours, Elder. But, sir, there's something else. We've been analyzing the patterns of human settlement distribution across the galaxy. They're not random. The hologram shifted to display a three-dimensional map of human-occupied systems. Red dots marked each confirmed settlement, connected by glowing lines that showed the relationships between their positions. They form a geometric pattern, Director Sithrak explained. Specifically, a modified dodecahedron that encompasses approximately 60% of inhabited galactic space. If their quantum resonance systems are designed to interact with each other, they could create some form of galactic-scale network, Elder Velnath finished. Exactly the kind of thing humans would attempt. Connect everything to everything else, regardless of the consequences. A High Counselor Thaindok stared at the tactical display, finally understanding the true scope of humanity's plan. They hadn't returned simply to reclaim territory or seek vengeance. They had spent 3 millennia designing a way to reshape galactic civilization itself. Director, how long do we have before this network becomes operational? Unknown, sir. But based on the energy buildups, I'd estimate less than 1 standard week. The chamber fell silent except for the ambient hum of life support systems. 3,000 years of careful galactic order. 10,000 species living in structured harmony under council guidance, all of it potentially threatened by the return of a single species that refused to accept extinction. Admiral Zexai, Thaindok spoke into his communicator. Cancel all diplomatic initiatives. Mobilize every available ship across all sectors. We have 72 hours to prevent humanity from activating whatever they've been building. Understood, High Counselor. What are our rules of engagement? The Thranedok looked at Elder Velnath's ancient form, remembering the debates and desperate decisions that had led to Earth's destruction 3 millennia ago. History was repeating itself, but this time the stakes were higher and the outcome far less certain. The total war, Admiral. Complete annihilation of all human forces and settlements. We tried to show mercy 3,000 years ago by making it quick. This time we cannot afford such luxuries. The transmission ended, leaving the High Counselor alone with Elder Velnath in the vast chamber. Outside the crystalline walls, the lights of 10,000 peaceful worlds continued their eternal dance, unaware that the next few days would determine whether galactic civilization survived in its current form. Did we make the right choice? Thranedok asked quietly. Elder Velnath's support pod hummed as she accessed memories stretching back across centuries. We made the only choice available to us, both then and now. The question isn't whether our actions are right or wrong. The question is whether we're strong enough to see them through to their conclusion. In the darkness beyond the chamber, quantum communication arrays carried the High Counselor's orders to every corner of galactic space. Within hours, the largest military mobilization in galactic history would begin, as 10,000 species united in a desperate attempt to prevent humanity from achieving whatever impossible goal they had spent 3 millennia planning. But in 67 star systems across the galaxy, crystal spires continued their patient growth, counting down toward a moment that would change everything. Humanity had indeed returned for revenge, but their vision of justice extended far beyond simple retribution. They intended to remake the galaxy in their own image, and no force in the universe would be allowed to stop them. Admiral James Harrison stood in the command center of the Vindication Asterisk, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of Council fleets across 17 sectors. The numbers were staggering even by galactic standards. 12,000 ships converging on human settlements from every corner of inhabited space, representing the combined military might of 10,000 species united in common purpose. "Sir," called his tactical officer, Commander Lisa Park, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the threat they faced. "Final count confirms earlier estimates. The Council has committed approximately 70% of their total military assets to this operation." "The 70%, Harrison mused, studying the tactical displays with the patience that 3 millennia had taught his people. "They're betting everything on a single coordinated strike. Can we hold against those numbers?" asked Captain David Kim, the youngest ship commander in the human fleet. His vessel, the Defiance Asterisk, represented the newest generation of human technology, built entirely by survivors who had never seen Earth but carried its memory in their genetic code. Harrison considered the question with the care it deserved. 7 ships, no matter how advanced, against 12,000 vessels crewed by species that had perfected warfare across countless conflicts. By any rational calculation, humanity was facing annihilation for the second time in their history. "We're not trying to hold David," he replied finally. "We're trying to buy time." Time for what, sir?" "For the network to achieve full operational status." Harrison gestured toward a separate display showing the status of crystal spires across all 67 human settlements. Progress bars indicated construction completion, energy buildup, and quantum resonance calibration. Most showed green, but several key nodes still registered amber or red. How much more time do we need?" Commander Park checked her calculations. "Engineering estimates 18 hours for final calibration. Maybe less if we push the fusion reactors beyond safety parameters." "Push them," Harrison ordered without hesitation. "We didn't spend 3,000 years planning this operation to fail because we were conservative with our power systems." The command center fell silent, except for the hum of advanced technology as his staff processed the implications. 18 hours to hold off 12,000 enemy ships while protecting settlements that couldn't yet defend themselves. Even for humanity, renowned for achieving the impossible, it seemed like an insurmountable challenge. "Sir," came a new voice from the communications station. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Haven 7. Commander Chen requests immediate conference. And put her through. Sarah's image appeared on the main screen, her face showing the strain of coordinating defensive preparations across multiple systems. Behind her, the bridge of the Remembrance buzzed with activity as her crew prepared for the approaching battle. Uncle James, status update on the final preparations. 18 hours until network activation. The Council is throwing everything they have at us, but our defensive positions are as ready as they're going to be. What about the psychological warfare protocols? Are our people prepared for what's coming? Harrison nodded grimly. The Council's approaching fleets weren't just carrying conventional weapons. Intelligence indicated they had loaded psychological warfare systems designed to break human morale through targeted broadcasts of Earth's destruction. After 3,000 years, they still didn't understand that humans drew strength from their grief rather than being weakened by it. Our crews are ready. Every ship has volunteers who have chosen to view the original footage from Earth's bombardment before battle. They want the reminder of why we're fighting. Sarah's expression darkened. The Council really doesn't understand us at all, do they? No, Harrison agreed. They think showing us Earth's death will break our spirits. They don't realize it will only make us stronger. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the asterisk Vindication as long-range sensors detected the first wave of approaching Council ships. The tactical display updated to show massive formations dropping out of hyperspace at the edges of 7 different systems. Their combined firepower sufficient to crack planets. First contact in 6 hours, reported Commander Park. They're not wasting time with negotiations. Neither are we. Harrison turned to his communications officer. Signal all human ships. Activate Protocol 7. Across 7 star systems, human vessels began implementing tactics that had been refined through countless simulations during their long exile. Instead of forming traditional defensive lines, they scattered into seemingly random patterns that would confuse enemy targeting systems while maximizing their own tactical advantages. Sir, Captain Kim's voice carried a note of uncertainty. Protocol 7 assumes we're fighting an enemy that follows conventional tactical doctrine. What if the Council has adapted? Then we adapt faster, Harrison replied with the confidence that had carried humanity through 3 millennia of careful planning. David, remember what we learned from studying their military history. The Council has overwhelming firepower, but they've grown predictable through centuries of unchallenged victory. They expect enemies to either surrender or fight defensively. We're going to do neither. The hours that followed tested every aspect of human preparation and resolve. As Council fleets closed on their positions, human ships implemented tactics that seemed to violate basic principles of space warfare. Instead of concentrating their forces for maximum defensive firepower, they spread across entire star systems, using their superior mobility to avoid direct confrontation while striking at carefully selected targets. Contact, reported Park as the first Council ships entered weapons range of the outer settlements. They're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. A response. Standing orders from all human commanders. No response. Let our actions speak for themselves. The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness of space as Council fleets opened with concentrated barrages designed to overwhelm human defenses through sheer volume. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds filled local space like a deadly storm. Enough firepower to sterilize continents. None of it reached its target. Human defensive systems activated with mathematical precision, creating gravitational distortions that bent spacetime itself into impossible configurations. Energy beams that should have vaporized human ships instead curved around them like light around a black hole, while kinetic projectiles found themselves trapped in recursive loops that sent them spinning harmlessly into empty space. Impossible, whispered one of the junior officers as he watched the tactical display. They're firing 10,000 times more ordnance than we are, but none of it is connecting. Physics, Harrison explained calmly as he watched Council ships waste ammunition on targets they couldn't hit. They're still thinking in terms of overcoming defenses through superior firepower. We've moved beyond that paradigm entirely. The human counterattack began with surgical precision that spoke of 3 millennia of careful planning. Instead of targeting enemy ships directly, human vessels fired quantum torpedoes at specific points in space, where council formations were predicted to be in exactly 3.7 seconds. When the weapons arrived at their designated coordinates, enemy ships materialized around them as if summoned by destiny. 12 council ships simply ceased to exist as quantum uncertainty collapsed their molecular bonds into probability equations. 23 more found their primary systems unmade, as reality reasserted itself around them in configurations that didn't include functional weapons or propulsion. Sir, Park's voice carried amazement despite her professional training. We've disabled or destroyed 47 enemy ships without taking any damage ourselves. Phase 1 complete, Harrison acknowledged. Signal all ships to begin Phase 2. Instead of pressing their advantage, human vessels suddenly disengaged from combat and began rapid tactical retreats toward their respective settlement worlds. To outside observers, it appeared that humanity was abandoning the battle after a brief show of defiance. The council commanders, predictably, interpreted this as an admission of defeat and ordered full pursuit. 12,000 ships converged on human settlements, their crews confident that overwhelming numbers would finally overcome impossible technology. They were walking directly into humanity's trap. Network status? Harrison demanded as his ship fell back toward Haven 7. 17 hours, 43 minutes to full activation, reported the engineering station. But, sir, we're approaching minimum safe distance from the settlement. If we retreat any further, we won't be able to provide effective defense. We're not retreating, Commander. We're leading them exactly where we want them. The Council fleets followed human ships deep into the gravity wells of 67 star systems, their formation discipline breaking down as individual commanders competed for the honor of delivering the killing blow against humanity's most advanced vessels. What had begun as a coordinated assault became a disorganized pursuit as ships spread throughout local space. Now, Harrison whispered as Council forces reached optimal dispersion. Human ships suddenly stopped retreating and activated systems that had been hidden throughout their long approach to this moment. Each vessel transformed from a warship into something unprecedented in galactic history. A mobile quantum resonance node capable of linking with the crystal spires growing on nearby worlds. The network connection established, reported Park with barely contained excitement. We're showing green links to all settlement sites. Energy buildup detected across all nodes, added the engineering officer. The crystal spires are resonating in perfect harmony. Harrison felt a moment of profound anticipation as 3,000 years of preparation reached its culmination. Around them, Council ships continued their attack with desperate fury, their weapons still unable to penetrate human defenses, but their crews unwilling to acknowledge defeat. They had no idea what they were about to witness. The network status approaching critical threshold, Park announced. All quantum resonance nodes showing maximum charge. Sir, the communications officer's voice carried a note of awe. We're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Every human settlement, every hidden colony, every secret research station. They're all coming online simultaneously. Harrison nodded as he watched the tactical display update to show the true scope of humanity's return. Not 67 worlds, but over 300. Not 7 ships, but entire fleets that had remained hidden until this moment of revelation. Open a channel to all council forces, he ordered. It's time they understood what they're really facing. The transmission went out on all frequencies, carrying Harrison's words to thousands of enemy ships and eventually to the Galactic Council itself. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of a species that had spent 3 millennia preparing for this moment. This is Admiral James Harrison speaking for all children of Earth. For 3,000 years, you believed you had successfully eliminated humanity from the galaxy. You were wrong. The tactical display showed council ships beginning to realize the true scope of their situation, as hidden human settlements revealed themselves across hundreds of star systems. We didn't come back for conquest or territory. We came back for justice, and we brought something with us that you made possible through your attempt at genocide. Harrison paused as the network reached final activation threshold. Crystal spires across 300 worlds beginning to sing with unified purpose. You taught us that survival requires unity. You showed us that individual worlds can be destroyed by overwhelming force. So we spent 3,000 years becoming something you never imagined possible. The first harmonic pulse erupted from the network, a wave of quantum energy that propagated through subspace faster than light itself. As it passed through each star system, something unprecedented occurred. Every living consciousness within range suddenly gained direct awareness of every other mind connected to the network. Well, we became one people, Harrison continued as council ships found themselves surrounded by a psychic web that linked 300 human worlds in perfect communion. One will, one purpose, and that purpose is to ensure that no species ever again faces the choice between submission and extinction. The second harmonic pulse carried more than just consciousness-linking energy. It carried information, memories, and the accumulated knowledge of human civilization across 3 millennia of exile. Every person within range of the network suddenly gained access to technologies, philosophies, and possibilities that the Galactic Council had spent centuries suppressing. Individual freedom, personal responsibility, the radical concept that authority must be earned rather than inherited. These ideas spread through the network like wildfire, reaching not just human settlements, but every inhabited world within range of the quantum resonance field. Billions of consciousness, touched by human memory, began to question assumptions that had seemed eternal, began to imagine possibilities that had been unthinkable. This is what you were really afraid of, Harrison concluded as the third and final harmonic pulse activated every quantum resonance node simultaneously. Not our weapons or our technology, but our ideas. And now those ideas belong to everyone. The network achieved full operational status with a sound like the universe itself singing in perfect harmony. 300 worlds, billions of human minds, and countless allied species suddenly found themselves linked in a psychic communion that transcended space and time. For the first time in galactic history, a species had achieved true collective consciousness while maintaining individual identity. The children of Earth had become something unprecedented, a single people that could act with perfect coordination while celebrating the unique contributions of every member. And they were no longer alone. Across thousands of worlds, other species touched by the network's resonance began to experience the same transformation. the same awakening to possibilities that the Galactic Council had denied them for millennia. The age of imposed order was ending. The age of chosen unity had begun. High Counselor Thanedoc materialized his emergency form in the secure bunker beneath the Council's primary headquarters, his crystalline structure radiating patterns of pure terror. Around him, the surviving leadership of galactic civilization huddled in a chamber designed to withstand supernovae, watching their carefully ordered universe collapse through real-time reports from across 10,000 worlds. "Status report," he demanded, though part of him already knew the answer would be catastrophic. The Director Sithrak's holographic projection flickered with interference from the quantum resonance network that now blanketed half the galaxy. Complete systemic failure across 67% of member species. The human network has triggered what can only be described as mass psychological transformation on an unprecedented scale. Explain. The quantum resonance pulses didn't just link human settlements. They created a consciousness bridge that extends to any sapient mind within range. And, sir, that range is expanding exponentially as more worlds join the network voluntarily. The Thanedoc felt his crystalline form shift to patterns of disbelief. Voluntarily. Yes, sir. Species that have been under council authority for millennia are actively choosing to connect to the human network. They're experiencing concepts like individual freedom and earned authority for the first time, and they... Sithrak paused, his expression carrying a mixture of fascination and horror. They like it. The implications crashed over Thanedoc like a quantum tsunami. The Galactic Council's authority had always been based on the fundamental assumption that most species preferred stability and order to the chaos of self-determination. The humans had somehow proved that assumption catastrophically wrong. What about our military response? Admiral Zexhi's fleets. 40% casualties in the first engagement. The remainder are either retreating to defensive positions or... Sithrak hesitated again. Or what? Defecting, sir. Entire ships are surrendering to human forces and requesting integration into their network. The Thanedoc's form flared with colors that had no meaning in any known language. The idea that Council military forces would abandon their posts to join humanity's rebellion was beyond his comprehension. These were professional soldiers from dozens of species, sworn to uphold galactic order. Have they been mentally compromised? Some form of psychic warfare? Our analysis suggests otherwise, sir. The network appears to enhance rather than control consciousness. Personnel who have been exposed report feeling more like themselves than they ever have before, not less. Before Thanedoc could respond, alarms echoed through the bunker as another report arrived from the outer sectors. Elder Velnath's ancient form stirred within her life support pod, her centuries-old mind processing information with the clarity that came from having witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. How many systems have we lost? She asked quietly. The director Sithrak consulted his rapidly updating displays. As of this moment, approximately 4,000 worlds have either joined the network directly or declared independence from Council authority. The number is increasing by roughly 100 systems per hour. At this rate, the Council will control less than half of galactic civilization within one standard week. Elder Velnath observed with the detached precision of a historian recording the fall of empires. The Thanedoc struggled to comprehend the scope of the catastrophe. In less than 72 hours, humanity had gone from extinct to commanding a rebellion that threatened the very foundations of galactic order. It defied every principle of military strategy, political science, and social engineering that the Council had developed over 10 millennia of rule. What do they want? He asked desperately. Territory, resources, tribute. We've received formal communications from Admiral Harrison. Director Sithrak replied, activating a recording that filled the bunker with the calm, measured voice of humanity's military commander. High Counselor Thanedoc, this is Admiral James Harrison speaking for the United Children of Earth. We do not seek your territory, your resources, or your submission. We seek only what every sentient being deserves: the right to exist without fear, the freedom to choose our own path among the stars, and the guarantee that no species will ever again face extinction for the crime of being different. The recording paused as Harrison's image appeared on the bunker's main display. He stood on the bridge of the Vindication surrounded by tactical displays showing the rapid expansion of the network across galactic space. However, we cannot ignore the fact that this council, under your leadership, attempted to exterminate our species and continues to support policies that deny basic freedoms to billions of sentient beings. Therefore, we propose the following terms for ending this conflict. The Thaindok felt his crystalline core temperature drop as he prepared to hear humanity's demands. First, the immediate dissolution of the current Galactic Council structure and the establishment of a new governmental framework based on voluntary association rather than imposed authority. Impossible, whispered Thaindok, though he continued listening. The second, full autonomy for any species or world that chooses to govern itself independently, with mutual defense agreements replacing the current system of enforced compliance. They want to destroy everything we've built, Elder Velnath observed with clinical detachment. 10,000 years of carefully maintained peace and stability. Third, the establishment of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate historical injustices committed under Council authority, with appropriate reparations for species that have suffered under our rule. The recording continued, but Thaindok had heard enough. The humans weren't just seeking revenge for Earth's destruction. They were demanding the complete restructuring of galactic civilization, according to principles that the Council had spent millennia proving were dangerous and unworkable. Well, what happens if we refuse? He asked Director Sithrak. Unknown, sir. But preliminary analysis suggests that the network will continue expanding regardless of our response. Every species that joins gains access to human technology and knowledge. Within months, they'll possess capabilities that rival our own. And if we accept their terms, Elder Velnath's support pod hummed as she accessed historical databases. If we accept, we admit that 10,000 years of council authority was fundamentally wrong. Every species under our protection would have justification to rebel. Galactic civilization would fragment into thousands of independent entities with no central authority to maintain order. Which might not be a bad thing, came an unexpected voice from the chamber's communication array. The Thaindok spun toward the source, his crystalline form flaring with rage patterns. Who dares to... The delegate Kethvar of the Asari Republics. The voice identified itself. I'm speaking from our home world, which voted 6 hours ago to join the human network. You've betrayed your oath to the council, Thaindok accused. No, High Counselor. I've chosen to honor my oath to my people, who deserve the right to determine their own future. Kethvar's image appeared on a secondary display, showing her standing before the Asari High Assembly. I've experienced the network directly, High Counselor. I've felt what it means to be part of a civilization based on cooperation rather than coercion. You've been brainwashed by human propaganda. I've been awakened to possibilities I never knew existed. Kethvar's voice carried absolute conviction. The network doesn't control our thoughts or actions. It simply allows us to coordinate them voluntarily. For the first time in my species' history, we can work together without anyone being forced to submit to external authority. Before Thaindok could respond, more reports flooded into the bunker. The Draconi Empire had declared independence. The Zelonian Trade Federation was negotiating terms with human representatives. Even the Kethurian Collective, the Council's oldest allies, were conducting formal debates about joining the network. Sir, Director Sithrak's voice carried a note of desperate urgency. We're receiving word that Admiral Zexhai is requesting immediate communication. Priority Alpha. The Thaindok authorized the connection, expecting to hear plans for a counterattack or at least a strategy for limiting further losses. Instead, Admiral Zexhai's image appeared on screen showing a being that looked decades older than the confident military commander who had briefed the council just days earlier. High Counselor, I'm transmitting my formal resignation from council military service. Zexhai, what are you talking about? Sir, I've been fighting in the name of galactic peace and stability for 40 years. I've believed in the Council's mission, trusted in our authority, dedicated my life to maintaining order. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in a pattern Thaindok had never seen before. But I've spent the last 3 days watching civilizations transform themselves without violence, seeing species achieve unity without coercion, witnessing peace created through cooperation rather than force. You're abandoning your duty. No, sir. I'm finally understanding what duty really means. Admiral Zexhai looked directly into the camera with the clarity that came from absolute certainty. The humans have offered amnesty to all Council military personnel who choose to join their cause. They're not seeking revenge against individual soldiers who followed orders. They're offering us a chance to serve peace instead of merely enforcing it. The transmission ended, leaving Thaindok alone with the surviving council leadership in a bunker that suddenly felt more like a tomb. Outside, the galaxy they had ruled for 10 millennia continued its transformation into something unprecedented in galactic history. What are our options? He asked Elder Velnath, trusting her ancient wisdom to find some path forward. We could attempt to hold the core systems, she replied thoughtfully. Approximately 3,000 worlds remain under direct council authority. We could establish a reduced but stable civilization based on traditional principles. A shadow of our former greatness. Or we could negotiate with the humans, Director Sithrak suggested. Accept their terms and attempt to influence the new galactic structure from within. Which would mean admitting that everything we've believed and fought for was wrong. Elder Velnath's support pod moved closer to Thaindok's crystalline form. There is a third option, one that requires considerable courage. What? We could join them voluntarily, experience the network for ourselves, and discover whether their promises of freedom and cooperation are genuine. The Thaindok felt his form shift to patterns of absolute shock. You're suggesting that the High Counselor of Galactic Civilization should surrender to a species we attempted to exterminate? I'm suggesting that perhaps it's time to stop thinking about this in terms of victory and defeat. Elder Velnath replied with the wisdom of centuries. The humans have demonstrated something that we believed impossible, a form of civilization based on voluntary cooperation rather than imposed order. If they're correct, then joining them represents evolution, not surrender. Before anyone could respond, new alarms echoed through the bunker as reports arrived from the Council's most secure facilities. The central data banks, the military command centers, the research installations that formed the backbone of galactic civilization. Sir, Director Sithrak's voice carried a mixture of amazement and terror. We're receiving surrender notifications from our most classified installations. Facilities that officially don't exist are declaring independence and requesting integration into the human network. Yeah, how is that possible? The network appears to be spreading through subspace itself. Any consciousness exposed to its resonance becomes capable of choosing whether to join. And, sir, the overwhelming majority are choosing yes. The Thanedoc stared at the tactical displays showing the collapse of everything he had devoted his life to protecting. 10,000 years of galactic order dissolving in a matter of days, as species after species chose freedom over security. "Signal Admiral Harrison," he said finally, his crystalline form settling into patterns of resignation. "Inform him that the High Counselor of the Galactic Council requests formal negotiations for peaceful transition." Sir, Director Sithrak looked confused. "If we can't defeat them and we can't contain them, then perhaps it's time to learn from them." Thanedoc accessed his personal files, beginning the process of transferring council databases to human custody. "Besides, I find myself curious about what 3,000 years of planning has truly created." Elder Velnath's support pod hummed with what might have been approval. "A wise decision. And perhaps when this is over, we'll discover that the humans have given us something more valuable than we lost." What could possibly be worth the collapse of galactic civilization? The chance to build something better. As the last reports of surrendering worlds arrived, Thanedoc began to compose the formal communication that would end the Galactic Council's authority over the civilized galaxy. Outside the bunker, 10,000 species continued their transformation into something unprecedented. A galactic civilization based on voluntary cooperation rather than imposed order. Humanity had kept its promise. They had returned for revenge against those who destroyed Earth. But their revenge had taken a form that no one could have predicted. The complete replacement of a system based on fear and control with one based on freedom and mutual respect. The children of Earth had indeed come home, and they had brought the future with them.